Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. There are a lot of unusual things occurring right now in our solar system. Of course, we have Interstellar Object 3I Atlas, which sometimes looks like a comet, but it also has a bunch of other anomalous characteristics to it. Now it's headed towards Jupiter. We see that it has this tail here, has this clear sunward facing tail, which is quite bizarre. It's also been spouting off jets of plasma, gas, and dust and more. And well, we really don't know what this thing is. Perhaps it's even something like a plasmobiont, a plasma organism. We've been discussing that on the channel from the beginning. Now, 3I Atlas is not the only comet in our solar system right now with a sunward facing tail, which many are stating that is the most bizarre characteristic that it has. Here we have Comet R2 SWAN, so this is C2025 R2 SWAN. And we see that it very clearly has a sunward facing tail. So this is the normal anti-sunward facing tail, but just now, also like 3I Atlas, this comet now has this jet of plasma, dust and gas and everything pointed towards the sun. And what's kind of bizarre about this is that both of these comets are fairly similar. So they both flew in fairly close to the ecliptic plane. They both have a green color. We don't see it in this black and white, but it also has the same greenish color as 3I Atlas. They both had their perihelion around the same time. This was September 12th. 3I Atlas was October 29th. And now both of them have this sunward facing tail. And this just recently formed in the past week or two. So that's bizarre. What you add into that now is that both of them are perfectly on either side of the Earth right now. And it's almost like they're performing a pincer maneuver where you flank your enemy from both sides. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but because there's so much interest in this alien technological angle and there's this new Age of Disclosure documentary and a lot of people are talking about this right now, I think it's worthwhile to think about this perspective of us not being alone in space, and also to think about the larger strategy of the solar system, because right now there is an invasion in our space and we are effectively helpless to it, and we are seeing objects in our solar system which are quite anomalous. So to see this pincer maneuver in action, let's roll the clock back all the way to the perihelion of R2 SWAN and look at their orbital trajectories. That was September 12th. We have this here visualized via the SkyLive. Link to this in the video description, as well as everything else I'm showing you in this video. That's what I always do. Okay, so we see that R2 SWAN here is closest to the sun. Its distance is only 0.5 astronomical units away. In fact, we didn't pick it up until it was at its perihelion. So it did this entire zoom in here and we didn't notice that at all. That's the first thing, is that we are putting on a lot of new telescopes and observatories that hopefully catch these objects and comets and whatever flying into our solar system, but we're also pretty clueless and blind at this moment in time. And we really need to expand out our defensive capabilities, you could say. So this is September 12th. We see 3I Atlas here still in the asteroid belt. If we click play, we will see that R2 SWAN has this very close flyby of Earth. You may remember me talking about that when it happened. Here we have the perihelion of 3I Atlas, and then we can stop it right on today, and you'll notice this alignment between 3I Atlas, Earth, and R2 SWAN. You'll also notice that R2 SWAN is pretty much along the ecliptic plane of the planets in the solar system, just like 3I Atlas is. 3I Atlas is only 5 degrees off, which is effectively right on it. And then R2 SWAN is a little bit more than that. You see its orbit there kind of going out, but it's also flying in close to the ecliptic plane. So there's a lot of interesting things as it relates to that. You can connect that to solar activity and like the flow of energy between these two and Earth. But from a solar system strategy perspective, this is not a good formation for us to be in, because effectively they have control of our space on either side. And of course, now they're going out like this. If we consider the gravity involved, it would take a tremendous amount of energy to redirect. But from this perspective of there being entities in space, that technology very well could exist for them. We have some reports of there being anti-gravity craft that can go up and zoom forward and immediately take these sharp turns and everything. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. There's also a lot of nonsense in the UFO UAP community that's just made up. And there's a lot of people that just say stuff to say stuff with that, and they don't provide evidence, but there are some unusual things that are documented across time. In fact, going back thousands of years. You can look at some of the historic, ancient evidence for this. So very, very interesting. But this is effectively a pincer maneuver, because a pincer maneuver is where you go in from the front and then come in on the sides. And this is effectively where we are right now. And we also have this line of energy going in between R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas. But this is made even more bizarre by the fact that R2 SWAN is now looking like 3I Atlas. It is a totally different object, yet it's now also formed a sunward facing tail, has the same color and everything. Let's check it out. Here we have the Astronomer's Telegram, which is a way for astronomers to quickly post updates to the community on comets and how they're fragmenting or changing, and let's say gamma ray burst and more. And so we can go to this article right here, and I'm going to read this article for you, okay? Comet C2025 R2 SWAN displays an anti-tail. The long period comet C2025 R2 SWAN has already been the subject of 2 astronomers' telegrams. It recently showed a significant increase in brightness followed by signs of fragmentation. Also, K1 Atlas, which a lot of people have confused with 3I Atlas, has also broken up into 4 pieces now, which is interesting. Orbital elements indicate a period of about 784 years, and the geometric configuration between Earth, the comet, and the Sun determines the visibility of particular structures in the coma and tail. Near the comet's orbital plane, the dimensions of the tail can be observed in its perpendicular plane, where the dust is only minimally affected by the orbital velocity vector. At particular elongation angles, when the Earth crosses or approaches the comet's orbital plane and the line of sight is close to it, comets can also display the rare phenomenon of an anti-tail. This feature is formed by larger dust particles which are less affected by solar radiation pressure and tend to remain confined near the orbital plane and project as a sunward pointing feature. So that's how a sunward facing tail forms according to this understanding. And I'm going to link this if you want to read the rest of it, but basically there have been some measurements of R2 SWAN across time, and back in early November, we weren't seeing a sunward facing tail. Now we are. And part of that equation is because our geometry with R2 SWAN has improved such that now we can see these features, but there is also the possibility that it's just now forming one and those two are lining up at the same time. So here we can look at some of these images. We see figure 1, figure 2, and this is November 10th, this is November 18th. Here on November 10th, we see that there is a bit of a sunward facing tail right here. Here's the main tail, here's the sunward facing tail. And if we go down to the 18th, look at how much that's increased now. So now we really clearly have a sunward facing tail here, and here's the normal anti-sunward facing tail. So R2 SWAN is becoming more and more similar to 3I Atlas day by day, and both of them are strategically in a perfect position to perform something like a pincer maneuver in our solar system. And we can look at some optical imagery of R2 SWAN to see just how similar it looks to 3I Atlas, both in size and shape and with the tails and jets and everything. This is an image here from November 22nd. This is 16 30-second exposures, 10 arc minutes across there for our viewing. We see this tail right there, but we also see this sunward facing jet and tail. So you can get a lot of images like this if you go to X and just simply type in up top like the comet that you're interested in, and there's always going to be astronomers posting new images and such. So here we even have a time lapse of R2 SWAN moving across the sky. So it's also moving quite fast. That's another thing as well. We can see that multiple people are making these sunward facing tail observations. So it's not just one group that saw that. That Astronomer's Telegram showed two different groups showing the same feature, we can also use a crowdsourced platform here like X to observe that as well. Here we see that tail, we see that sunward facing tail as well. So 3i Atlas and R2 SWAN are looking very similar right now, and they are perfectly positioned in the solar system if they were space invaders to do some sort of shenanigans. Now, I don't think they are space invaders. I think 3i Atlas is a very unusual interstellar object, and I lean actually towards that Cosmobiont hypothesis. I think there's a lot more there that we don't know in terms of the intelligence and consciousness of plasma, that higher, more vibrational form of matter. And therefore, I think that every comet that flies into our sun that energizes also would fit into that definition and that whole new area of exploration for us. But I do think it is useful to think about the angle of these things being maybe beings or technological craft or whatever, because the universe is a huge, huge, huge place. I think it is incredibly naive to think that we are the only ones here, unless we are a simulation and it's focused just on our solar system, which doesn't make sense to me. I think the universe is quite a bit more epic than that. So there is this huge universe around us. There are tons of stars around us. We have lots of red dwarfs that would make good habitable zones. We have, for example, the Pleiades, a huge star cluster, 444 light years away. We have stars that are just nearby, like Alpha and Proxima Centauri, and then you also have Sirius and more. So we're surrounded in the light year scale and the parsec scale by a lot of different star systems. Our area is quite active, and it makes sense that you would have other planets around those stars that happen to also host life. We are in the habitable zone, the Goldilocks zone for our solar system. Of course, life can take on many different shapes and characteristics, I would think. But notice how our one star has a lot of planets. So the equation is effectively for every star, you at least have one planet or more. So there's a lot more planets out there. And then you include in like the trans-Newtonian dwarf planets and things of that nature. There's a lot more planets out there than there are stars. So with that understanding, there are so many planets around us. And the fact that none of them would be host or home to advanced life, that I think is quite foolish. And also we can consider how it may even be interdimensional. So space and time is no longer a roadblock for these conscious organisms. And they could perhaps just transport across the solar system however they want. I think that in fact is the main evidence suggesting that these sort of comets and objects and 3i Atlas and everything aren't technological in origin, because once you get to a certain point of advancement, it's going to look like magic to us. I think you're moving beyond space and time. And I think that they're actually already here, and they've been here the whole time. In fact, that they're just in a different plane and dimension of reality that sometimes intersects with ours. But these are my thoughts. I wanted to show you the orbital elements of 3i Atlas and R2 SWAN and speak about it from a strategy perspective, because I'm a fan of sci-fi. I read a lot of these books growing up about the solar system and kind of the expansion of humanity across it and interstellar warfare. So I think it's very interesting, and there seems to be a lot of interest in it right now as well from people all across the world. So I took this as an opportunity to do that. If you'd like to see more videos like this, then please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button. We cover what's happening here on Earth energetically. So this is volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, geomagnetic storms, weather events, also solar activity and space weather, which influences all that to some degree. We're piecing that together. We also examine comets and interstellar forces and cosmic forces and more. So if you like the sound of that, then please subscribe. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm wishing each and every single one of you well, and I'll see you all in the next video.